There are only 8 types of units in all of Total War Warhammer 3. Sometimes they cross over and intersect, but this simple breakdown will allow even the newest player to understand all of the over 300 types of units. And today we are going over the artillery units. We've already gone through the defensive, offensive infantry, as well as gunpowder and arrows. Check those out after this, but you don't need that background to understand this. We're going to go through the fundamentals of the mechanics, all simplified, and then the top 10 artillery pieces, so you know which ones to use, the categories of them, and more importantly as well, how to counter them when you do come across them. So starting off with artillery, what are the basic duties of artillery? Well, they need to provide long range damage. This is an advantage not just because you can soften enemies up from across the field, this also means you can have units at the back of your formation in the rear providing really high amounts of damage, and for armies like the Empire, this can be absolutely key. You can use your frontline shielded spearmen to hold the line, and then you can volley mortar shots over the top, smashing through whole waves of zombies which you just simply wouldn't have the ammunition or attack to do. You can only have so many swords and shields on the front line. If you can provide good area of effect damage to the thick of those lines, you are going to do huge amounts to try and sway the battle in your favor. Additionally, also you will gain a leadership debuff if you are being peppered by arrows, artillery, all the rest. Add in a flank and that unit will be running before you know it. So the second standout duty you might have guessed is for siege equipment, i.e. blowing through walls and taking out towers. Now you don't need artillery to achieve this. However, if you're especially fighting higher leveled, more fortified garrisons where they have really damaging siege towers, this can be a huge help to you. The final point is the one I really want you guys to take away. If you take away nothing else, it is this. There are 2 types of artillery: catapults and cannons. A catapult fires a single volley, which will maybe take a bit longer to hit the ground because it has to go over such a long arc. This means it can fire over terrain, over walls very well, but it's easier to dodge. However, it usually delivers a good area of effect piece of damage. Mortars, catapults, all of these will do great to thin out the herds of the enemy infantry. On the other hand, we have cannons, and cannons are usually better for taking out higher tier threats. Picture cannons as more of a laser. They are going to be taking out single entities like monsters, lords, heroes very, very well. This is what they're designed to do, and they're of course very good against fortifications. As a practical example, we have the mortars from the Empire of Man, able to deal great overhead damage, volleying over the top, but we also have the cannons, which are, well, a cannon, able to deal great damage, but they do require line of sight, so a flat map like this, not really a problem. We want to target their lords or high value units, so we can volley into them in a nice straight line, and their quick projectiles will allow them to hit units that are a bit harder to hit. Let's have a look at calibration distance. If you notice, if we hold Alt, we can manually fire. Do you see this? This is the calibration area. The further we go, the wider it gets, i.e. the less accurate we become. However, each range unit has an effective range. It's usually around 70%, somewhere between 70 and 80%, where you'll see it starts to really drop off. Up to the first 3 quarters, it's pretty good, but then, woof, it really starts to drop off. So you will notice you get better mileage as units are closer. Your catapults, on the other hand, you want to be dealing really great damage. Now, you might cause some friendly fire if you just aim here. So we're going to hold Alt and then manually fire just on the very edge. Now, we won't do as much damage, but we will certainly guarantee less friendly fire, and sometimes that's exactly what you want. But for factions like the Empire, who struggle to get high amounts of damage in the early game, this is an excellent way to do it by dealing nice area of effect damage by clumping the enemy up. And as you can see, by aiming at the edge, we do less damage, but we're taking less friendly fire. But as you can see, not all friendly fire can be prevented. Just a quick reminder, guys, if you are enjoying the video, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps out. Ask any question in the comments. I answer everything. And if you'd like to talk strategy, feel free to join the Discord. Cheers. Now, jumping into number 10, if you followed this series so far, number 10 is always a spicy take just to maybe make you see something differently or from a different perspective, and it is going to be the Saigore from the Beastmen. Now, some people would categorize these as a monster, but remember, we're not talking about what it is, we're talking about the role in which it fulfills. It's like a chessboard. You have the pawns up the front, you have your valuable queen in behind, and you will build your formations and your strategies accordingly to those abilities. And the role this is achieving is artillery artillery fire, and it does so very, very well. And you know, for a monster, 25 melee defense, it doesn't actually have very good melee stats. It doesn't charge in very well. It's not overly quick. 50 armor, it's not going down, and has no physical resistance to make up for that. So it will go down if you hit it enough, but it does have nearly 10,000 hit points. So that in itself makes it more than workable for a monster if you need to use it for that. But you want to be keeping distance from it, using other nearby units, right, to give it the ability to unload all of its ammunition. It does have the 25 rounds, so it will do a lot of damage with that, but this, like you'll notice in many other cases, will provide some good area of effect damage. But here's a tip: it's tall, and it's not just a cannon firing, it is being lobbed by a monster, so it gains, effectively think of it like a marksman bonus, so it's more accurate than a lot of other units. So it is a high tier unit, so that needs to be considered, but this will do all of your sieging and really soften up the enemy, and particularly maybe long range artillery or long range maybe gunfire units. This will flatten them with a big stone to the face. Probably the best thing about Saigores is their simple ease of use. No matter what you want to hit, you can just simply aim at it and not really worry about your flanks. Anyone that does outflank you will cop a hoof to the face and be all the more sorry because of it. So a very forgiving and easy to use piece of artillery, and yes, it does double as a monster if you so need. Next entry is the Hell Cannon, and this might be a bit controversial, some people may or may not agree with it, but please allow me to explain. This unit is so incredibly accessible and is the stable artillery piece for the forces of chaos. Now, a lot of armies won't need this at all, and whether you do field it will depend on your playstyle and your ability to navigate with it. But the one thing about it is so flexible, and that is why it makes its way onto this list. Dealing magic damage means it will always be relevant regarding whatever you are targeting. And as you can see, the homing works really well. Even fast units like Scaven slaves on the move can still be hit, and it will auto-correct. These possessed balls of energy just wreck whatever they're looking at, and they are also effective against lords. And lords are often, depending which army you are up against or even playing as, can be the biggest concern you have. But target these against a lord, even on a flying mount, they will still deal damage to them, and this flexibility is why they are secured in this place. Next on the list we have the Tomb Kings, and as normal we will talk about all of the options this race has available, not just picking out a single one which has nice stats, the context of the army, so this is real advice that you can apply to your campaigns. Now, the Screaming Skull Catapults, this is a good catapult, but it's not the best one out there. The damage leaves a little bit to be desired, but it does reduce the enemy leadership, and it does deal magical attacks, so no physical resistance will get in your way. And as the Tomb Kings, you really need to use all the small components to equal up to force multipliers that help you get that win. So Screaming Skull Catapults, good area of effect in the early game. However, if you do get the chance, you'll be limited by the campaign, but if you do get the chance, get yourself a Casket of Souls. It deals a ton more damage, and these shots are also homing onto the enemy, so this will deal really great damage onto large blobs of even armored units. And the accuracy, if you recall from the gunpowder video, please see that one after this because it talks about calibration range and calibration distance, but ballpark around 3/4 of your range. Once they're within that, you will deliver far more accuracy, and even units with homing missiles will follow that rule. Now, whilst this does a ton of damage, it does follow the same rules for normal catapults, and that is it's not that great against single entities or monsters or heroes, so it does a ton of damage provided you are fighting high level infantry or cavalry. Now, for another lesson, you do want to keep your artillery safe because once they're tied up, they'll stop firing. This is why you should always have at least one support unit, and the support unit can often just take the form of even just a low level unit of spears nearby, and the job of this unit is to push away anyone that is stopping your artillery units from firing. Now, when they do get interrupted, sometimes the crew will be scared away. Well, because they're undead, these guys are dead, but normally you'll need to put the unit back onto the artillery piece. So just keep that one in mind there. And then if there are artillery coming, remember, stretch your spearmen out and get them to face and brace. Next up we have the Vampire Coast, and it should be no surprise they've made some presence here, but let's just contextualize how good or not good they are. Well, when it comes to the early options being, i.e. the mortar to deal with large clumps of infantry, this is absolutely indispensable in a gunfire oriented army. Gunfire is excellent at taking down usually higher value targets with extreme accuracy, and even if they're fast, they will hit them with their fast projectiles. But the flip side is that they can't unleash as much saturation. But you also have the carronades, and this is essentially just the good old-fashioned great cannon, your anti-large sniper. It works in the exact same way as the Empire and the Dwarfs ones do, but having a few of these in your army, I would only ever have 2 max. And while these early options are quite good, you don't get many chances to get the granddaddy of them all, the Queen Bess. And this is an absolute behemoth of an artillery piece, but you are staunchly limited in it in the campaign. So you're not going to be seeing too many of these, and we do have to take that into account. Just remember to keep on replenishing the ammunition of the Queen Bess so it keeps on getting the most out of those bonuses. Enhanced ballistics, and then fire away. Oh, look at that. Before there was the Dreadquake mortar, there was the Queen Bess. Our next entry is a faction wild race, I should say, that keeps on making it into these top 10 lists, and that of course is Grand Cathay, with a plethora of very good and quite diverse artillery options. We have the Grand Cannons, and it really is just a cannon. You've seen it all before, but they also get the Fire Rain rocket battery, basically a Diet Hellstorm rocket battery, also dealing flamey ammunition. That they just don't quite have the armor piercing that the Empire variants do have. But the unit making it into our list is going to be the Skyjunk, and I freaking love this unit. Now, it doesn't have that much ammunition, it doesn't even volley that much, but the fact it is stationed so high means it is so indispensably awesome and fun to use when taking on fortifications, when taking on hilly terrain, on fortifications. This is just amazing, and it's such a fun and versatile unit to use. Crane gunners shooting on all 4 sides, you can just continually deal really great damage with these. They're also a lot of fun, and once you've fired off all of your rockets, you can quite easily fly over the top of a group of infantry and just bomb the crap out of them, devastating their morale and their numbers. Coming in at number 5, we have the Ogre Kingdoms, and it might surprise you to see that the artillery is an area where they really specialise, but it's just really good. As with all things Ogre, it's mounted on a single unit, so you don't have a formation of 4 units, just the one, but it just lobs the hell of a lot of crap, and it does so in quite a wide area. Now, in some cases for some factions this would be a bad thing, but for the Ogres this is a huge strength. You will be outnumbered quite significantly in any case when you are fighting on the battlefield, so this scattering large amounts of fire, even if the armor piercing value isn't that high, it just does so much damage saturation. But the actual unit you want to bring is the Iron Blaster, which is far more reliable at higher levels, and of course is carried around by that same amazing mount. Oh, it does not matter what it aims at, it is really going to hurt whatever it so chooses to target. This is going to be quite useful because you don't want too much inaccuracy in your ranged units with the Ogres, because you are typically moving forward. They are not a defensive faction by any shape of the imagination. If you're playing defensive with the Ogres, you're doing it wrong. In number 4, a unit that has still been in top 10 lists since 2016, if you can believe that, the Organ Gun of the Dowi, still an absolute mainstay of any army, and absolutely ravage elite infantry, flying units, and of course lords and heroes. The only things that will really threaten you as the Dowi, this unit fixes. It is the biggest problem solver you could possibly have in the few situations where you might actually struggle as the Dowi. So let's put them into a formation. We'll go into formations later. I do have a dwarf guide on formations, and that'll carry you most of the way, but I just want to show you there's different ways to lay out your artillery. You can go all the way in a row of 4, or you can actually just bump them in by 1, which will lose a bit of range on the very last projectile, but this will give you a faster turning circle. The wider they are, the longer they take to turn, so by having just one behind, I find this can actually make the formation itself a little more defensible and able to basically deal with if you do get flanked. But as usual, let's put a defensive unit down the back, or at least in reserve, so we can counter stretch out. Now the one unit I haven't mentioned here is the flame cannon. I simply like to have a unit of iron drakes up near the front of the army, and there's just so many other ways you can deal with blobs of infantry. I don't find it a very productive unit to use. You don't need flame cannons because you have iron breakers. These guys will take out the infantry blobs before they ever get close, and anyone that does, just use one unit of iron drakes. You'll be amazed just how much that can actually deliver for you. As with all races who have an engineer, make sure you put that ballistics calibration on them, and they'll do even more damage for you. And just remember, they're also really great at blowing apart cavalry. Oh. With their steel faith and gunpowder, we have the Empire in at number 3, and it's not hard to see why, particularly with the latest update. Now they do get amethyst versions of some of their units, and I should have put that into account with the gunpowder unit. Please check that out, and if you want to, you can bump the Empire up a spot or two maybe because of that. But in terms of artillery, the top 4 you can kind of interchange, but we're going to see why the Empire is so good, and it's because of the combination of this time we have 2 units together. Not one, not the other, but 2. We have the Hellblaster volley guns, unleashing torrents of gunpowder, high caliber, hitting really quick, and just precisely taking down really valuable targets, quite similar to the organ gun in its application. But then we have the herd thinner, we have the Hellstorm rocket battery, one of the most famous units in the entire game, and man, this just does huge area of effect damage with highly armor piercing rounds. Really great unit, but you need them in a combination, and this is just my personal favorite setup. I like to have a wide line of Hellblaster rocket batteries almost side by side in the back line, and then 1, 2, 3 Hellblaster volley guns. Remember, these will arc over the top, being a catapult type, and these, even though they're auto cannons, they are still effectively cannons, so they sit higher, but they still need some form of line of sight. Now, the internet will tell you need to spam Hellstorm rocket batteries. That is absolutely not the case. You don't spam them, but they can still do the hell of a lot of damage. Now, as you can see on harder difficulties, the AI will try to avoid your missile fire. You can use this to your advantage. This isn't necessarily always a bad thing. We can use the artillery dodging to our advantage by breaking up their lines and disorganizing their approach. For example, we have a cluster of units here. Let's manually target, so by holding Alt, we can manually target the enemy. But if you're newer at the game, rather than aim manually, just keep on choosing different targets for your Hellstorm rocket batteries. Coming in second place, we have the Scaven, and once again they have a couple of really great options. They don't just have low tier units that get replaced by high tier units, they have a plethora of awesome tools which can help deal with a multitude of problems. Let's start off with the Plague Claw catapults. These are such a good unit for when you get them, and they remain to be quite useful, particularly if you can get some ranks on them. They will see you all the way through to much of the late game. All of the Scaven artillery deal magical attacks, so they'll cut right through that magical resistance, dealing of course armor piercing damage, but also demoralizing the enemy, which of course is very important for Scaven to do. You must also contextualize this with the Scaven army, who can just throw hordes of disposable infantry and basically force the enemy into blobs that you can then capitalize on with great area of effect damage. Their other artillery piece, the warp lightning cannons, are very good and will help snipe down enemy units, also being extra useful because they have an anti-large bonus to 70, which is pretty damn nice. But they do have a bit of internal competition with the weapons teams, namely the Rattling guns and the Warp Lock Jezzails. Both those gunpowder units are so good at using their high velocity shots to blast to pieces enemy units, elite infantry, monsters, almost anything. However, this cannon does give you a bit more range, so if you want one in the rear of your army, I would still recommend that if you so choose. But you can have really unique armies with Scaven. You can spam or lean into whatever you want. Now, this is a custom battle, but just remember, in a campaign battle, you'll have menace belows galore, and you'll be able to use those again to control the enemy. If the enemy is dodging your rounds, again you can hold Alt and then even predict where they might be. And as you can see, we've pushed back a unit, but is this the unit we want to be harassing? Let's harass the handgunners, where they're a much more dangerous unit, so let's use one catapult to harass one lot of handgunners and then use the other to harass the other. Now what we're going to see here is, as the shots come through, They don't want to get hit, so they're moving around. Now this has destabilized their front line. Look at them coming disorganized. This is the advantage of using the fact they'll avoid the artillery to your advantage. We're now able to take them apart a bit more piecemeal, which means their knights have come in a bit less supported, and we can use our rattling guns and our much more nimble weapons teams to take them out. With the warp lightning cannon doing really great damage to lords and single entities. And in the most unsurprising sequence of events, we have ended up at number 1 with the Chaos Dwarfs, and let's just go through their options because they're all freaking great. We have the Magma Cannon, which isn't just an amazing cannon, it also does good damage, it also reduces leadership through fire, but it also leaves miniature vortexes which devastate the enemy. This is followed by the Death Shrieker rocket launcher, another amazing artillery piece, magical damage, but it also has 2 fire modes, one dealing a massive cluster of 8 rockets which will demolish units of infantry, but also having the option to fire a single shot, and this is really great. So this gives you the option to both be a catapult and a cannon, so very, very useful. But let's talk about the king of all catapults, the infamous Dread Quake Mortar. This is an absolute behemoth. You won't be able to spam it too much in the early game due to the fact you need armaments with the Chaos Dwarfs, so just keep that with context being key. You will still need those other options, but this just has such a huge, incredible range. Yes, it can miss. Yes, it does take some work to get, but when it does hit, an entire unit, regardless of what armor they're wearing, will just turn into paste, and man, it is hilarious. Of course you need to protect them, but they're artillery, you knew that already. But once again, when the enemy is on approach, I mean, there we go. So that was some Lothan Seaguard. Not a bad target, but let's target the Sisters of Avalon, and hopefully we can take out another unit. It doesn't help that these are elves as well, so they're squishy by nature. That's the Death Shrieker rocket launcher, dealing a good spread of damage against the high elven units. But we could also switch its firing mode over to demolition rocket. Let's see if we can take a piece of this Moondragon on approach, and oh, bang. Fantastic shot from the This is why it's the best. It's a one-horse race. It is so good. Such a good piece of equipment. As the Magma Cannon leaves a little vortex to chew up the enemy. And that's number 1, and that completes this list. So thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please consider liking and subbing. Check out the whole series. This is one of my favorite series I've done so far, but this was the least detailed video in it so far. We didn't need to go into quite as much detail because we have covered so much ground before. But if you want to, please check out the rest of the channel. We do everything from tier lists all the way up to beginner videos and to even ones which will take you from at least intermediate to perhaps advanced if you are looking to try and take on the next challenge. If you have any questions, feel free to join the Discord. It is free for anyone to join. Hope you've enjoyed the video. I'll catch you next time.